You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought you... Ugh, my Lord.
You got to leave it in, Fran. You got to leave it. We embrace our mistakes.
Do we? All right. Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I am a mistake-free Tom Kinezic. And
wow. I almost stumbled the second time. I don't know what I'm thinking.
You're in your head.
I am in my head. Like, I can't do it.
Today we were buzzing into episode 147,
nice.
Which is still amazing. That's higher than I can count. But we do have a lot of really good native plant information for you today. And like usual, we want to start with a little bit of follow-up. And that's, first, I do want to take some time to recognize, I guess we can call this our 3-year anniversary episode, right?
We're 2 days past our 3-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. So happy anniversary.
Yeah.
147 episode, a couple 100,000 of downloads, and it's been quite a wild ride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Well, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And
I have as well.
We've become much more polished, but not completely polished, as evidenced by the beginning of this episode.
To make it even less polished, I thought we could celebrate our 3-year anniversary.
Oh, what do we got?
I'm
going to have to reach for that.
Stuff. If I wasn't already stumbling my words, so I was trying to get elderflower liqueur, which I couldn't find on the spur of the moment, but I did get a lemon and elderflower vodka.
Nice. And I still have this bottle of cactus juice margarita schnapps.
I'm gonna pass on that one.
That is, I think it's like a 1982 vintage.
All right.
That came out of one of our coworkers' parents' liquor cabinets when they cleaned it out. So,
all right.
But Fran is now making the pour, and this is a vodka.
Yes.
And we're just
it's a generous
straight
pour.
It's a very generous pour. I think I'm going to sip this.
I think it's a good idea to sip it. But I thought we needed to celebrate, and it does have
I don't know why I smelled the microphone. I went to go smell the drink.
All right, but cheers to 3 years.
Yeah.
Tom, congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations to you, too.
Thank you. Let's see how this is. What do you think?
You can taste the elderflower.
You can.
Yeah, a
little bit. Taste the lemon?
A little bit of lemon. I'm assuming it's real. It is Smirnoff. It could be fake.
Let's see. Does it really say? No, it doesn't. It's zero sugar. It just says vodka infused with the natural flavors and essence of real botanicals.
Interesting.
So
very cool.
Yeah. So it wasn't what I wanted, but at least it had elderflower in it, and I thought that was close enough to celebrate.
Maybe I'll mix it with the cactus juice and
that will be one heck of a of a podcast.
But we also wanted to touch on. There was something else that was when I said the 3 anniversary thing that I was going to say as well, but I can't remember. But I do want to talk about how I was at the National Wild Turkey Federation conference.
Yes.
Or convention.
And National Wild Turkey Federation was one of our first guests, actually. Mm-hmm. It was within the first 10, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe it was 6. I don't recall.
Yeah, it was pretty early.
But we had the state, New Jersey state chapter president came on. And actually, I've talked to a couple other wild turkey researchers. I was just listening to a wild turkey podcast the other day, and they were talking about habitat restoration and how in certain areas of the country, wild turkey populations are starting to go down. Okay. They don't really know why, but the one thing all these researchers can point to is say that there's a bunch of things that go in the mix, but habitat is one of them. Is that they all can point to and say, hey, this is no matter if it's do they have enough nesting locations? Do they have enough food on the landscape? Do they have like the brood rearing habitat, like that short kind of grass where they can hide, but it's still open enough for the young birds to get through and predators aren't going to pick them up? it all comes back to habitat. And that was actually one of the things that was really rewarding about this conference. I'll get aside. First, being a hunter, it was just really cool to go and see some of the brands and the people that you see online and on TV in person, especially some of the YouTube folks, which I got a chance to talk to, like people like the Hunting Public and Catman Outdoors, and they're interested in the habitat side of things as well. And while they're making a living from a hunting YouTube channel, they're really invested in like how the habitat looks, and trying to use their influence to kind of leverage some of this to happen with people at home. So that was really cool to talk to those guys about that kind of thing.
That's I didn't use it for my article this buzz. If I can find it, I might use it for my next buzz. But there was an article about a vegan reporter that went hunting.
Yeah.
And then walked away with like a newfound respect for the hunters that she went hunting with. And it was very intriguing to me. And it was, I just thought that was an interesting take.
Yeah. But yeah, I got to communicate with some people I'd met online before. And while I was hanging out with some folks that had way bigger followings than we do, like Kyle Leibarger and his partner Jake Brown. And like I said, the Hunting Public guys and Catman Outdoors. And people are walking up to them and saying, "Oh yeah, I really love watching you on TikTok and YouTube and all that." And I had a handful of people say, "Oh yeah, I listened to your podcast before," which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That was nice to hear.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. It was nice talking to some of the researchers at universities that are looking into this, and really, they all kind of point to, like I said, a variety of different issues for this bird, but a lot of them are pointing to habitat being towards the top of the list.
Well, you've
those issues.
Seen where I live. It's a little more congested. It's becoming an increasing problem that you get a rogue turkey that's just hanging out on street corners in a busy, where there is no natural area, and people are concerned because they're seeing it. They don't want to hurt it, but they don't look healthy.
Yeah.
Like they look out of place, and that's an issue because like I just spotted turkey in our backyard yesterday, and it really isn't ideal habitat for like the turkeys look healthy, but it's not ideal grounds for them where they're and we had never seen them before. It was they got startled by a downed tree. So it's I understand. Like I get it.
Oh yeah. And the benefit of it is the habitat that is really good for turkeys, also good for quail, oftentimes good for deer, really good for a lot of pollinators. In fact, hint, that's a lot of turkey food is insects and caterpillars and that kind of stuff. So, and a lot of that makes up a lot of bird food. Yeah. So while it's great for that, it's kind of like a symbiotic thing where it's helping attracting the insects is helping all kinds of other carnivores in that sense. So that was just a really rewarding conference to go to, kind of see how this was an underlying topic that a lot of different people were talking about at that convention. And then second, I want to promote the Native Seed Conference, which is coming up in Washington, D.C. It is March 26th through the 30th. I'll be there. I think my brother's going to come.
Awesome.
And
we know a lot of people that are going to be at that conference.
Our next guest is going to be at that conference. Yes. I know there's a lot of people that I'm going to connect with down there. So if you listen to this and you want to talk a little bit, I'll be there. I'll be talked out. I'm going to come home with a horse or losing my voice again.
Like we did for Mans.
Yeah, so hopefully you can catch up with me down there, and I get to meet a lot of people.
Awesome. Yeah. No, some great stuff coming. I'm really excited now that in-person stuff is happening again. There's all these great conferences in our area, and we've made so many new relationships since COVID started. The opportunity to get to see some of these people for the first time face to face. It's a wonderful opportunity, so we're really happy and excited to be able to do that. Yep. Like you've gotten to see Kyle Leibarger twice this year already.
Yeah,
so it's pretty awesome.
And hopefully more. He wanted to go to that Native Seed Conference too, but he's got a newborn and
makes
hard
it
to get away.
Tough. Yeah, so, makes it a little tough.
Well, awesome. All right. Well, let's get started with the plant stuff, and we're going to start with the plants we're vibing with this week in That's Hot.
I almost wasn't ready. I just realized at the last second that
Oh, you had your other sounds up?
I had the other soundboard up, so got lucky.
So, Fran, why don't you go first? Because I like your choice this week.
And I was asking you earlier, I couldn't remember if we have done this plant. Like, we've done enough buzzes now that I know we've repeated. For some reason, I think you may have done this one before. Because you've done a video about this before, right? Mm-hmm. But my choice is American hazelnut, which is Corylus americana, because we have it right outside of our office windows. So I look at it every day, and I've been noticing the male flowers, which are yellow-brown catkins, and they typically start in March. But we've been so mild this February that they're actually out a couple weeks early. So that's what made me notice them. And they'll typically last through June. But Corylus is in the birch family, which also get catkins, so that makes sense. Female flowers are obscure. It's a shade-loving deciduous shrub, reaching at most 15 foot. At times, most times it's 8 to 10 foot. I think for us, they're probably about 8 foot tall. We've cut them back a little bit. Yeah. They're easily, speaking of cutting back, they're easily pruned and they heavily sucker. It's a facultative upland. It does produce an edible nut that has a ragged, papery husk that are liked by both squirrels and birds. The fall color ranges from bright yellow to a deep wine red, and it is native from Maine to Georgia, west to Oklahoma, and north to North Dakota. Yeah,
and that's what I was going to point out there is the ones that we have outside the office. Just a year or two ago, we hacked them back to the ground. Yeah. Like, it wasn't just a little light prune. It was, hey, cut them off at the base and see what happens. And
they responded really well.
They're back 6, 7, maybe 8 foot at their tallest points. And I know it's another thing, foreshadowing to my article later, that works really well in a hedgerow. Because they can get, since they sucker, they get really thick.
They do.
And even though they aren't evergreen, it's going to direct wildlife people, hard to see through. Yeah. There's a lot of benefits there.
And they do, I mentioned, it's shade loving. They do really like that shade, and they can take shade to sharp part shade. So it's, keep that in mind if you're adding it to your property. But it's nice to get that mast producing plant that helps squirrels, helps birds, helps a few different types of things. And you can also enjoy them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you have this week?
I picked Acer rubrum, which is red maple, and it's another one we've done before, and I think I've done it before for this exact same reason, is because it's blooming now.
It is.
And I think people think red maples bloom, and it has I guess you'd call it a flower, but it's this red and yellow flower that's at the tip of a lot of their stems, and the issue why you don't see many other flowers is because they're often way above your head, but they're really, really good for pollinators. And actually, can you play the Tom's Petty music?
Oh, yeah, I can. Maybe. You belong among the wildflowers.
I want to get into something that always bugs me. And it also bugs Kyle Leibarger because we talked about it.
All right.
And I've seen him talk about it online. This is one of the things I really admire about him is he does not care about riling people up online about certain stuff.
No, not at all.
And also Benjamin Vogt just did a long post on this too. They beat me to the punch in that dandelions are not really that great for pollinators. It becomes a thought that people have that they're great. And I wouldn't say that they're necessarily bad for pollinators. They're just where we see stuff, but don't really have, from what I understand, they don't really have a lot of nutrition for pollinators. It just tends to be what's out there, and it's easy to get. You often see a lot of generalist pollinators on them, not your specialists. But something like red maple provides way more nutrition for these pollinators, and that's just one of probably a dozen different species in our area that are providing really good nutrition, but they're becoming more and more absent from the landscape. So you're relying on dandelions. So you're going to see the stuff saying, oh, leave the dandelions, do all this stuff, how they're so good. They really aren't that good. Do I advocate you should go out and try and get rid of them? Probably not. It's probably, they might be causing more harm than good. And I don't know enough about they're here, and they tend to pop up everywhere, which makes me lean to, could they be invasive?
No one really wants them. No
yeah.
one's planting them in their property.
Yeah.
They just happen to take over if left unchecked.
And there are some native dandelions, but the ones you typically see in your yard are not the native ones.
Correct.
So it's just when you see those posts on social media, like just understand that that's really you need to plant native plants because that's what's going to benefit these pollinators. It's not it's one of the. This is what I guess I harp on, and same thing with no mow May. I don't want people to be confused and say, "Oh, I'm doing my part because I'm leaving the dandelions." You're really not doing that much. That's not like saving the pollinators. Plant some native plants. That's saving the pollinators. This is kind of like it's the Ralphie meme. And it's from Ralphie. I'm helping, but you're really not helping. You're just not doing anything.
Some of the best arguments that I've heard against them, if you go back and listen to our episode with Sam Droege, which was again pretty early on in the first 20 episodes for the what was it called? The
USGS Bee Inventory and Management Lab.
So that's someone I trust.
Yeah.
He is an expert. You know, if he's telling me this is bad and for the reasons why, I'm going to believe Sam.
Yep.
I'm going to believe Sam 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. And we've had people write in, namely someone from Canada, probably this time last year.
Yes.
And saying what a problem they are where they live and how it's like a really, really, they just will really spread rapidly if you let them go to seed. So I know with other invasive plants, one of the things I recommend is targeting use of herbicide on those plants to get them off the landscape as fast as possible, so you don't have spreading through rhizomes or through seed. So I can understand that, but I need to learn more before I advocate for that on dandelions yet. But I guess what I want to make clear is if you're leaving the dandelions, that's not what's helping. Plant native plants like red maples, like spring beauties will pop up.
Well, I don't think you went into it. What are some of the larval hosts that red maple?
Oh yeah, just on this is and this is again from Jersey Friendly Yards. It's a larval host for the rosy maple moth, the Cecropia moth, which is a cool one. And is that all that's on here? Yeah, those are the two that Jersey Friendly Yards lists on their webpage. And then there's a lot of caterpillars that'll eat on it, which is a food source for birds, like we just mentioned before with the turkeys. So not that I think turkeys are flying up there, but other birds are going to get the caterpillars up there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Awesome. 2 great choices. If you don't know them, familiarize yourself with them. Maybe these are plants that we'll cover on A Native Plant Every Day with Tom and Fran. And you can't go wrong, I think, with either one. Just make sure you have the space and the right conditions before you plant either of them. So what do you think? You want to do a little bit of this or that?
Sure.
So last buzz, our articles were very similar. I had the cultivars. What is a cultivar? Or what is it? Misleading facts about cultivars from the University of Maryland Cooperative Extension. Tom had what is a native plant from the Piedmont Master Gardeners, and we have a winner. And it was the squeaky wheel. Got the grease this week. I won 22-8. I would
we're doubling up.
No,
we're doubling up on the complaints this week.
I have to get your Tom's Petty on the soundboard. I would like to think that it was due to merit, not due to me complaining. But more than likely, it's a combination of both for that one. No, I think it had merit, and I think people really liked it.
Your article had a little bit more.
It kind of broke down some good arguments.
There's some good stuff there. My article, not that it was bad anyway. It was really good. It was just it was more of an overall descriptor saying, "Hey, this is really local. What a group is doing to help you plant with native plants,
and some great ideas and initiatives that they're doing." So we appreciate you voting. Regardless, 30 people voted, which we love. Oh, yeah. Thank you for voting. I'm actually going to go first. I'm going to choose to go first. Mine is a very long article, and I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'm going to try to – it's a shame because it's very well written and it's a little poetic. It kind of weaves a story, so it's impossible to read it all. It's called Giving Bambi the Boot, and this is by Brian Payton from – I don't know how you would pronounce that, Hakai magazine.
I guess.
And this was actually given to me from one of our listeners, but I'm going to save that until we do the listener shout-outs. And I'm going to do the intro, and I highlighted a couple articles, but this is one I really recommend you going back and reading the whole article because I think you'll get a lot out of it. Clear blue sky above a forested island surrounded by glittering sea, wild, uninhabited, and protected. It appears as if we're approaching paradise. We cut the boat's engine and nose into a rocky beach. Crowned with Douglas fir, Gary oak, and arbutus trees, Nursery is one of the 600 islands and islets scattered between mainland Washington state and British Columbia's Vancouver Island. An invisible border divides the islands into the San Juan and Gulf Islands, which is Canada, archipelagos. Prior to colonization, indigenous people hunted, foraged, and gardened there as they did on islands throughout the Salish Sea. Then, between 1891 and 1924, the government of the day sent lepers here, mostly men of Chinese descent, and essentially left them to die. Now within Canada's Gulf Islands National Park Reserve, Nursery is part of a groundbreaking study that imperiled island ecosystems and climate change. Tara Martin, the project's lead, is a professor of the Department of Forest and Conservation Science and Liber-Aero Chair. Is that how you Liber-Aero? I don't know that.
Yeah, I'd say Liber-Aero
Chair in Conservation at the University of British Columbia. She has brought her team of grad students here on the spring day to collect evidence of what she calls the greatest environmental tragedy facing these islands. It's part of a problem that has become common in North America and around the world, a problem with clear causes and what at first appear to be achievable solutions, if only it were that easy. Once every day is safely ashore, Martin abounds ahead. Her enthusiasm is infectious. As her students fan out the forest edge, she traces a path through the trees that seem to the untrained eye to be thriving, but to Martin they are a stand of living dead. To glimpse this forest future, she advises me to ignore the green canopy 6 stories above and look down at my feet. The understory should be thick with flowering plants and shrubs. Instead, it's mostly brown and spacious. If there were no deer here, she said, it would be all green all the way down to the bottom. Columbian black-tailed deer range from the southern British Columbia to southern California and as far east as the Cascade Range in the southern Sierra Nevada. They are native to this archipelago. They are also wildly out of balance. By the late 1800s, foreign settlers had exterminated the island's cougars and wolves, the deer's primary predators, and alienated indigenous people from the traditional deer hunting grounds. Over the past century, wildlife managers here and across the continent encouraged the proliferation of all deer species, popular game animals. More recently, changes in regulations and cultural attitudes have resulted in a dramatic drop in hunting. Deer have never had it so easy. Martin estimates their population on the island is now 10 times what it was before colonists arrived. I just want to it's getting tough. Let's see. Deer have been on human minds and in human lives for eons between 120,000 and 800,000 years ago. Homo erectus relied on deer for food on the island of Java. A Neanderthal living in what is now Germany carved chevron shapes into the deer bone 51,000 years ago. Between 33,000 and 30,000 years ago, Paleolithic people painted on the walls of Chavot Cave in what is now France. Among the animals they left for us to ponder are red deer, reindeer, and Megalosaurus, the largest deer to have ever lived. Deer are special. We're not talking about a plague of locusts, rats, or venomous snakes. We're talking about deer. And whenever the word deer and problem come together, many people have big feelings. Both indigenous knowledge and Western science have long recognized that deer can have big impacts wherever their predators are few, causing a trophic cascade. The ecological term for changes throughout a food web. Aldo Leopold, the first professor of game management in the United States, famously observed a century ago how overabundant deer on Arizona's Kaibab Plateau degraded the habitat to the extent that their population collapsed. I now suspect, he wrote in his seminal LaSalle County Almanac, that just as deer herd live in mortal fear of its wolves, so does a mountain live in mortal fear of its deer, and perhaps with better cause. For while a buck pulled down by wolves can be replaced in 2 or 3 years, a range pulled down by many deer may fail to replacement in many decades. Tara Martin has been studying the effects of overabundant deer for more than 15 years. Because some islands in the Salish Sea have deer and some don't, they provide a natural experimental setup to measure deer's effects on the environment. Martin has found that palatable plant species cover richness and diversity are 92% lower where deer are common and 52% lower where deer are scarce, less than a 0.08 per hectare. Hectare. All right. compared with areas with no deer at all. On some islands, native black-tailed deer and exotic fallow deer occur at densities of over 20 per square kilometer. The resulting loss of understory means the loss of habitat for numerous bird species, which rely on the first 1.5 meters above the forest floor for cover, nesting sites, and food such as flowers and seeds. There are over 300 species in this ecosystem that are being negatively impacted by overbrowsing, Martin says. Many of those are plants, but it also includes bumblebees and songbirds and our amazing alligator lizard and sharp-tailed snake species that are at risk of local extinction. While her work has helped to establish that overabundant deer are threatening the local ecosystem, she suspects the effects could also reach beyond this place. Here on Darcy Island, she and her team have set up soil moisture meters and camera traps to gather evidence that overabundant deer may make forests drier. Drier forests are more likely to burn frequently and intensely, releasing carbon into the atmosphere and contributing to global climate change. Let me skip ahead a little bit here. One of the most ecologically sound approaches, depending on the available habitat, is to reintroduce or support the recovery of native predator populations. But where there's practicality or politically impossible, the options on the table are traditional hunting, culling by sharpshooters, and fertility control. In 2020 paper, Texas A&M University environmental ethicist Claire Palmer and co-authors suggest that the last of these might be best in terms of deer welfare, but in terms of naturalness, lethal control may be the edge. Because it's similar to predation, limited resources might also tip the scales toward lethal control because it's cheaper and logistically simpler. But Palmer and the others write there's no simple or single answer as to what constitutes ethical management. One thing is clear, it's unethical to do nothing. If you're worried about ecosystems, Palmer says, it seems like there's a reason to reduce the deer population. If you're worried about human welfare, given the ways we live, it seems like there's no reason to reduce the deer population. If you're worried about the animal welfare, it seems that there's a reason to reduce the deer population. Traditionally, conservation and preservation has all been about not intervening, she concludes, but the additional pressure of climate change, interventionist conservation seems much more pressing. While Martin and her team continue to study the link between overabundant deer and climate change, she believes that learning to live with predators, boosting deer hunting, and returning indigenous stewardship to the island would help restore balance and allow native plants and bird species to thrive. Perhaps it could even serve as a model for others facing similar problems. If ecosystems like this are to survive outside hard-to-reach islands, the data indicates that governments and wildlife managers will have to act, Martin says. She hopes her work will help illuminate what's at stake so they and everyone else can make a tough decision with their eyes wide open. So it's a lot to think about, and I only read maybe a fifth of that article.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot I really had to skip through. But it's interesting some of the facts that, over deer population can attribute to harming over 300 species of animals and pollinators.
Yeah.
And that it's interesting that they have this control area, these islands that have deer that they can really watch. If the indigenous people of the time and area were able to hunt those deer and keep that population in check, and there were wolves and other things just left unchecked, just watching how that island degrades, and you have islands that it affects and islands that it doesn't. You do have that control, which is interesting to see. But it's a conversation not many people want to have. We have it on the podcast all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a tough conversation, but I think Dr. Jay Kelly was saying if you're an animal rights activist, overpopulation is it's an animal rights issue.
Yeah, by having too many deer on the landscape, you're preventing hundreds, if not thousands, of other animals to live, and that's animals. So because if Viburnum dentatum is a species, a shrub species that deer like to eat in our area, and if they eat all the Viburnum dentatum, and you don't have those plants like we don't at our farm down the street because they're all browsed by deer, then all the species that rely off of that plant to survive, they can't exist.
Yeah.
So there's insects, there's all kinds of stuff, and then there's the things that eat the insects. They can't exist if that species of plant doesn't exist because there's too many deer on the landscape.
And it hits home because, and walking through the natural areas around here, there isn't much of an understory or a healthy understory. Where there's a thriving understory, a lot of the time it's invasive material. And that's something that we're used to at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I've mentioned, I'm not sure that my kids would know what a healthy forest is supposed to look like if they saw it, because I don't think they've ever seen it in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So
the one segment that you read was kind of interesting when they're talking about the different strategies they have to combat deer overpopulation, whether it was like hunting, sharpshooters, or fertility control. Yeah. I know some of the research done on the East Coast has found that fertility control, and there's a couple of things here. One is it has not been very effective in practice. And then even when it is effective, I guess it throws the deer's hormones out of balance so that doe will remain in heat longer, making bucks more attracted to her and running all over and in highly urbanized areas, causing or potentially causing more traffic accidents because you have deer running around like crazy because they're trying to mate. And then one of the things, and I don't remember where I heard this, but they're saying it's presented in here as being a more ethical solution, but it's like, it's more ethical to trap a deer and then cut it open and eliminate its ability to reproduce just so it can live. You don't feel bad killing it. Like, that's more ethical than actually just killing it.
And actually, we both listened to the podcast Dear Humans.
Yeah, maybe it was there
that we spot. Yeah, and it was all the mishaps from what were happening to deer being let go too early and having infections and all the problems that it was causing there.
Yeah, and like, if you put it in a human perspective, and not to say that this is even the same thing, like, that would be really frowned upon. Like, that's not good. And the other thing when I think about that too is, well, we've seen in New Jersey how sharpshooters have been really effective when it comes to this. But it's important to remember that there aren't very many animals, humans are really one of the only ones that die of old age. Yeah. Deer and turkeys and all this stuff, they're fighting to survive every day, and very, very few of them die just because they got old. Yeah. Even the ones that do get old tend to get eaten while they're still alive. And so it's, I don't know. Again, this is anthropomorphizing a little bit, but if I was a deer, I think I would rather just everything goes black and not suffer.
Yes.
Than
being let go and suffer. Yeah.
Or not even let go, just walking around, and then all of a sudden a wolf is on my back, and I'm dying a more brutal death, like in fighting to survive, or starving to death, or all that kind of stuff. It's and at the end of the day, the deer doesn't care. They don't care how they die. It's just that they died. Yeah. But I don't know, if you think of humane, if it has to happen, what's more humane? You let them starve, or let the population thrive. So that's a giant, I know I'm just barely scratching the surface of a giant, like, environmental ethics debate. So yeah, feel free to weigh in on this too.
Yeah, and, definitely.
It's something I go through my head, and this is what I do for fun. I go through my head all this stuff over and over and over, and it's like, you can always answer with but what if, and then what if this happens, or how about this scenario? There's no perfect answer. There's always an answer that has, again, anthropomorphizing, but it has pain in it. So, I was mentioning to you last night, we had 8 deer in our backyard, and they hung out for a while, and I was trying to watch what they were browsing. So they were all kind of going after our lawn. We didn't do the leaves in the back, and we didn't mow late into the year. We kind of left it go. So they were all kind of browsing like this fresh, I don't know if it was grass or weeds coming out of the ground. Yeah. English ivy, which I don't think really helps them. Even though there was food there was plenty of poison ivy, but they were going out. I have one Canadian ewe that they were freaking out about. If you ever see 8 deer eating on one plant at one time, the only thing is it's on a slope, so they've kind of already browsed what they could reach. They're all trying to get on their hind legs to reach, what they could from this plant. And I'm thinking, if they're going crazy over trying to reach that, how little food is there for them to eat right now? And how is that good? Because you have 8 deer wandering in a herd through a residential neighborhood. Trust me, I may have natural area behind my yard, but it's a residential area. Oh yeah. Yep. They're probably like quarter-acre lots, maybe. It's not big. So. Yeah. No, that's a fascinating article, and I'm looking forward to sitting down and reading that whole thing.
It's a good one. It was hard to pick what to read out of that because there was so much good information, but just for the sake of time. And what do you have this week?
I almost had a very similar article. It was an opinion piece. I always tend to do this where I tell you the article I was going to present and then I don't. I present something else. But I'm saving you guys because it was behind a paywall and I didn't want to get anyone upset for being behind. But it was the article I really liked. Was called "I Bought a Gun and I Intend to Use It," and it was about a guy who lived in Virginia and he was suburban Virginia and he was going to become a deer hunter because of what they were doing to.
Was that the one where you said every time you went in it would give you a different name for the article?
No, I think Brad Mazursky posted that online, and that's where I was going to use it, but then I couldn't get to work.
Okay,
but so maybe I'll do that next time, but. The article I did choose, I also found on LinkedIn, I think. I forget who posted it. I should have given them
some great articles on LinkedIn recently. Yeah.
But it was from civileats.com, and it was called The Edges Matter. Hedgerows are bringing life back to farms. And again, I'll read a little bit.
Oh, awesome.
I'll give my input. I always say I'll save my input for the end, and then I end up giving it in the middle. So I'll try and make a point when I'm giving my opinion versus what they wrote.
Okay, so. Awesome.
Researchers have found that planting hedgerows helps farmers sequester carbon in the soil, manage pests, and provide habitat for pollinators and other wildlife. More than 20 years ago, Craig McNamara started planting woody vegetation on his family's farm. McNamara was an early organic pioneer in the region, and he prioritized weaving nature into the agricultural landscape at a time when it was far from popular. Native shrubs and trees lined a creek that ran through the walnut farm. Plants became boundaries between orchards and row crops, basically hedgerows. And didn't take long for the 450-acre organic farm to come alive, says Craig's son, Sean McNamara, who joined the operation in 2014. Bees, owls, ladybugs, and many other creatures still routinely visit the farm. Just a few weeks ago, a bobcat strolled through the bushes along the creek. These above-ground benefits to hedgerows are easy to spot, but a few years ago, McNamara watched as a soil scientist dug into the dirt surrounding them. She scooped up dark, rich, compacted soil, mycelial strands tangled within. I think we're in the middle of summer, and the soil, even the topsoil, was moist, he recalls. It was a memorable sight in drought-riddled California. That scientist, Jessica Chiartis, was studying the soil around hedgerows. She selected a couple dozen farms in the Sacramento Valley, an area that with plenty of well-established hedgerows thanks to a campaign initiated more than 20 years ago that sought to bring native vegetation back to local farms. California farmers who are contending with drought, flooding, and long lists of pests can ruin fruits, nuts, and vegetables haven't fully embraced planting native vegetation adjacent to fields, but as the state encourages and incentivizes climate-friendly agricultural practices, they might just start. Hedgerows are straightforward strips of shrubs or trees roughly 15 feet wide, but they highlight nature's complex work, said Chiartis. At the surface, the soil around them, you have buildup of litter, leaves, stems, dead insects, feces, what other organic materials are deposited. She explains, when it rains, the organic matter dissolves and moves deeper in the soil profile. That litter layer also protects soil temperature and moisture, creating a stable, thriving soil food web that pulls organic matter deeper into the ground. We are not fighting biology, she said. It's efficient. Recognizing that, the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, which we refer to often, offers a program to farmers nationwide that provides technical assistance and some funding for hedgerow planting. The Xerxes Society for Invertebrate Conservation is also focused on the expansion of pollinator habitat, including hedgerows. Individual states, including Minnesota and Iowa, have also encouraged the planting of native vegetation in the form of prairie strips. Hedgerows have been planted in farming and rural landscapes for thousands of years, according to Sam Earnshaw, a longtime sustainable farming advocate who helps growers establish hedgerows through NRCS. Ancient hedgerows drew property lines, confined livestock, created windbreaks, and even provided food and medicine. The industrialization of farmland in Great Britain, though, led to the removal of about 200,000 miles of hedgerows between the late 1940s and early 1990s. In the U.S., efforts to introduce natural vegetation to agricultural land took a huge hit, Earnshaw says. In 2006, I just want to see how much lower I had, the year a serious E. coli outbreak was linked to fresh spinach grown in California's Central Coast region. The outbreak sickened more than 2,000 people and caused 3 deaths. In the 5 years following the outbreak, a study found that 13% of the plants and trees growing along rivers in one of California's leading produce-growing regions were eliminated out of fear that they would provide habitat for wildlife carrying pathogens. And a few years later, Karp says a survey of California produce growers found that 40% were still removing habitat even a decade later. Karp says it's understandable, albeit misguided, practice A 2015 study co-authored by Karp found that, contrary to popular assumptions, the clearing of vegetation has been associated with increased prevalence of foodborne pathogens over time. Shrubs, grasses, and trees are well-known filters for nutrients and pathogens, said Karp, so you might just be able to prevent pathogens from getting onto your farm field by having those buffers. Long says that while many farmers have resisted planting hedgerows on their land out of fear the trees and shrubs would only draw harmful pests, studies have shown the opposite to be true. Several years ago, she and other researchers collected bugs in hedgerows during growing seasons over 2 years and found that 78% of the insects were beneficial, while only 22% were considered pests. Hedgerows do bring in more natural enemies like ladybugs and parasitoid wasps that move into adjacent crops, she said. Her research has also shown that farmers who have hedgerows don't have to spray as many insecticides as the farmers who have no habitat around their farm. Insect biodiversity can also encourage more effective pollination in orchards, Long says, because wild bees throw honeybees off their vertical methodical paths. The honeybee will kind of forget what it's doing and it will cross over rows. You get better pollination that way. That was something I'd never really considered before as a way for pollination. I want to chime in on that, but I have one more paragraph.
All right.
Though establishing hedgerows can cost thousands of dollars, at least in the very first few years, requires a dedicated watering source, a big deal in parts of California. Long's research has found that once the habitat is established, the pollination pest control that's provided result in a return on investment that lasts between 7 to 16 years. So there's a lot there. It's something I think most of you probably understand already when we talk about, we talk turkey habitat in the beginning and quail habitat. Like, that's a really great place for those kind of animals, and deer too. Great kind of place for those animals to be in is those hedgerows, which kind of connect some of these strips of woods together and more natural areas together. And then they actually help the farmer save money in many ways.
Yeah.
There's a lot to love there.
This article is really important for many reasons. And I'm glad they highlighted the work that Xerces does and the USDA Natural Resources, because we're aware of them helping farmers plant riparian buffers to help filter that area and all the good that it does and the beneficial insects and removing harmful nutrients from the ground and protecting your water sources. So many important factors that kind of get overlooked, or they're kind of considered a myth, I think, to a lot of farmers. But the evidence is there in the science and the data.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And it's just swaying some of those notions that farmers have that, hey, this is something, even in the East Coast, a lot of the farmers here are just, they're farming right up to the hedgerow, or they're getting rid of the hedgerow entirely because it's shading out their crops or it's causing all these other issues.
Or they want the little bit of extra land.
That little bit, you're talking about a very low margin product, and if I can get just a little bit more space, that's the difference between being in the red or the black.
Well, look at Jennifer from Nutrition for Longevity. How important native plants were to her regenerative farming practice. Because she was saying without it, you can't really do what you need to do without all the beneficials that native plants bring.
And that's one of the things that they've really done a lot of research on, is if you have those hedgerows or prairie strips, you're bringing in pollinators, which is going to help some crops, but not all. Some crops are wind pollinated, so you don't need the pollinators in there, but you're bringing in beneficial insects too, which are going to eat cutworms and eat some of your crop pests that you might have, and or parasitic wasps. So everyone, if you're a gardener, you're probably familiar with the tomato hornworms, which are actually a type of sphinx moth, which turn into like similar to a hummingbird moth, really beautiful looking, or really cool looking. I wouldn't necessarily call them beautiful, but they're interesting. Yes. So that's what that turns into. But you have these parasitoid wasps, this is actually really cool if you haven't seen it, is these wasps, like I think it's the great golden digger wasp is one of them, will actually go and will sting the tomato hornworm and paralyze it. It'll like pick it up and it'll fly through the air, like dodging all these birds that are, tasty treat for me now, and trying to get this flying caterpillar and bring it to its nest, buried in the nest, lay its eggs in it, and then the larval stage. So again, it's one of those things. If you don't have, in that case, the plant being a tomato, you're not going to have that tomato hornworm, which means that the wasp doesn't going to have the caterpillar to then lay its eggs in to
build up,
build the larvae, and then create more wasps. It's the food
balance. Yeah, it's the balance.
So it's just you need that kind of habitat. So while it's a garden pest, it's serving as a food source for something else. So, but if you don't have the habitat strips or those hedgerow strips or prairie strips to attract those kind of, attract first those other insects that are going to have those natural, I shouldn't say natural, have the insects coming in naturally, then you're going to get the predatory insects, and they're just going to kind of spill over into your garden or into your farm or that kind of thing. So, there's a lot of really, really good things for hedgerows, and then you can especially get like I mentioned hazelnuts before.
Yeah.
Or you mentioned hazelnuts. Get hazelnuts in those hedgerows. Now you have something that's feeding wildlife or feeding you. So elderberry's another one. There's lots of good things there.
No, there's a ton of fantastic choices that can really help their businesses and what they do, and help the environment and the ecosystem. So it just seems, it's weird. And I know we've talked about this. It seems common sense, but it's amazing how many people don't practice these practices, like or that it's a myth to them, or they're not sold that it's real. When science just keeps coming back and proving that these things are really beneficial to everything and what we're doing. But 2 fantastic articles. We've adapted the practice of posting now Monday afternoon, so everyone has the weekend to kind of absorb this, and then you'll be able to vote on Monday and read both articles. We'll put links on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, so make sure you vote because. And of course, the choice is yours. All right, so what do you want to do next? You want to do listener shout-outs?
Yeah.
All right.
Listener, shout out.
It's kind of funny, Fran, as I'm watching you. No one gets to see this except me, so I feel like I need to explain it to people.
Yes.
But when we go into those different segments, because this is uncut, like we're literally just flowing in one-to-one.
We don't edit this.
Fran is to keep things on pace without like a long awkward gap in there. Fran is like frantically looking for the button to push for listeners shout out.
And I should know.
His fingers going all over the soundboard.
How many times have I pressed that button?
Yeah.
And what you don't see, like when Tom asked me to play Tom's Petty, the soundboard is full, so I have a soundboard on my phone. I gotta try to and then I don't have the volume turned up on the phone because I'm afraid something will come through.
Yep.
So I don't
You mean
know.
like one of your ringback tones? Or?
Yeah. I have to kind of condense this to make it a little bit easier before the next buzz. I'm going to let you go first this time.
Yeah, so I already kind of shouted out some of them before, but it was when I was at that NWTF convention. I was just amazed that there was people there who had listened to us before. And one of them was a guy, Alan Summerford, who, and when I met him, I'm like, I just heard your name someplace. I don't know why, but I just did. And I'd heard him on the Land and Legacy podcast on the flight down.
Oh,
they were
okay.
interviewing him
All
about he has a cattle ranch in northern Alabama, and how they're managing it for both cattle and wildlife, and how you had all these different native plants that were in there. And you can actually see his farm on Kyle Leibarger's TikTok channel. They just did he had a video of them roundstone seed doing a seed harvest there for
cool.
fall panicum last fall. So that was really cool to see. And then, as we're talking, he's like, oh, yeah, I've listened to your podcast before a couple times. So I don't know if he's listening to this one, but if he is, here's your shout out.
Oh, awesome.
So, and then I also had, I got to talk with Kyle Leibarger and then his business partner who is off camera, but on their podcast, Jake Brown. They actually both had children recently. Kyle had a boy and then Jake had a girl. So, within a month of each other. So they took a little hiatus from their podcast thing, and now they're going to start it back up. Now they're getting a little older. But it was just cool talking to them and that they listen.
And you mentioned they were spreading the good word of the podcast as they introduced you to people.
Yeah, it was. I got to walk around this trade show with people, and then they'd been there before, and they were a little more connected than I was. Having walked down there for the first time, and just they're walking through, and then talking to people and say, hey, this is Tom. He's got Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. You really ought to listen to it. I'm like, that goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does.
When he says it.
It really does.
No, it's just nice to hear.
So I have a couple shout-outs. Mine, and I think you recognize the first one.
Oh, yeah.
It's our friend Catherine Malamphy from Greenbelt Native Plant Nursery in Staten Island, and our friend and colleague. And she actually supplied me the link to this article that I read today to try to help my losing ways. She said, "Here you go. You're welcome." So thank you. I used it, and I want to say thank you for listening and all the great work you do. And also Denise Alvarez, just because she shared she felt it was inappropriate for the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, but she shared with me a reel of a gentleman who's my age, in his 50s, Gen Xer, and all the things that we lived through in our life. And that out of all of that, the most fascinating thing was his bird feeder and what type of birds come to his bird feeder. So that kind of resonated with me since I took bird photos all weekend and was texting them to people. So that one I got a lot of fun out of, and I shared that on my Facebook page. So I really appreciate you for sharing that. And always, we could shout out all day long, but thank you to everyone that listens. And we can't do this without 3 years strong, and the message keeps getting bigger, and the listener group keeps getting larger. And we couldn't do this without all of you. So thank you. So speaking of listeners, we do have a question this week.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So I read the transcript, but I didn't actually listen to the message, so I hope it's
accurate to the transcript.
Yes,
yeah.
I would imagine that it is, but I'm going to play it now.
Hi, Fran and Tom. My name is Zach Rittner, and I'm a high school science teacher in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Some seniors and I just wrote a grant to install a pollinator garden on our school campus. And we actually are using Garden for Wildlife, like you talked about on your podcast. My question was, if we want to build a pollinator garden in our school's courtyard, which is completely enclosed, it's open to the sky, but it's completely surrounded by the building, what's the best way to attract pollinators like, insects and birds to that area? Thanks so much. Love the podcast and looking forward to some insights. Bye now.
Zach, thank you for calling in. I just want to say thank you for a shout out for Gardens for Wildlife.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And also, I would also check with the Xerces Society if you want to check with Cass Urban Mead, who we've had on also. Mm-hmm. They are preparing their next round of grants for pollinator gardens. And you could get plants from us, which are New Jersey ecotype and naturally adapted. So I would reach out. I think it hasn't. I don't know that they published it yet, but I just got the information from them. So it's coming out soon or might already be out. So I would check in for that also. But I think actually the idea of a pollinator garden in a courtyard is a fantastic idea because you're allowing anything that can fly in to fly in, and you're giving them protection from predators. So you can have birds coming in that can actually nest and hide. It's going to be tough because that ecosystem is limited to what can crawl in. You always find, even though it may seem isolated, you're going to end up having caterpillars and other bugs that maybe you didn't think you would have. If you build it, they will come. I'm sure you'll end up getting squirrels. It may make it a little more difficult for these things to find it, but once these things bloom, I think you're providing like an oasis in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. I don't know how insects tend to find this stuff, but somehow they do.
Yeah,
and Dr. Dan Rand was giving a presentation years ago, and it showed like what they thought insects might see flowers look like, and how because we see a certain range of light waves, and but insects see like a different range, and they can see some ultraviolet light. So it's like flowers look completely different to them. And so I wonder if there's like some kind of signature, like a butterfly just happens to be flying over and sees this, and like, or if there's a scent that gets up in the air, and like something that attracts them in some way. I'm not the expert, so I don't know that, but from my experience, it just seems like I've never tried it in a completely enclosed area, but we had a farm field that had been a farm field for decades. And then the first year we put like native plants there for native flowers, it was just swarmed with this stuff. So I would imagine that you'll have plenty of luck getting pollinators and birds in there
easily.
No problem.
Things like coneflower that keep their seed late. Goldfinches love. I think you'll see a nice diversity if you plan accordingly. Just take note of light requirements. I'm sure it's a little tricky, and you're going to have a lot more shade than sun in a lot of instances. But just map that out so you know shade-loving plants and sun-loving plants. And I think your students are going to love. Hopefully, it's not a distraction at some point because everyone's watching the birds and the butterflies, and you're hearing the chirping.
I'd imagine, at least for the birds, they're probably like I was as a fisherman, and I would first, when I would go out fishing in the ocean, I would look and see, well, where are the birds? Because the birds are looking for bait fish in the water, and if you have birds that are like diving like crazy in the water, there's probably bait fish over there. If there's probably bait fish, there's probably bigger fish. And then number two is you just look where all the other boats were going.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they're all going that way, so I'm going to follow them. But I bet you like a lot of animals are just like that. They see that little bit of activity, and that says, oh, I'm going to go check that out too. It's like if you're fishing on a lake, it's the same thing. It's like you see a guy or someone sees you fishing near a dock or fishing near a log. All of a sudden they're 100 yards away or 50 yards away, and then they're like basically on the same boat with you. Yeah. It's like for whatever reason, people need to fish next to each other because they feel like, oh, that guy's got to be doing better than me. I imagine animals are very similar. So if you have like one bird flies in, all of a sudden you're going to have multiple birds flying in because they see that one bird going in and out. So
and I would think that it being a courtyard that more than likely kids are only going to be out there when it's supervised, so you should be safe from vandalism. Hopefully, or just people picking flowers or kicking through, like sports equipment, soccer balls hitting it or something like that. It should be a pretty well protected. They're going to come. As long as you plant the right plants, they are going to come. So, and it sounds like you're already dealing with the right people for this. So you should be well on your way. And I appreciate you spreading the good word to your students about native plants and local ecosystems. So. Fantastic question. We thank you for calling, and for anyone else, please don't forget to call in. We would love to get your questions. So, no grow read a book. We already did that. We did a Tom's Patty.
I've been reading on I've been flying a little bit, so I've been reading on the airplane. It is tough, and if I had another Tom's Patty, this would be what it is. But like, I don't know. I'm just a bigger guy, so I feel rude if I'm reading a book and now I'm moving a lot while I'm already encroaching on your. I got wide shoulders and. So I'm already like trying to minimize my impact on my neighbors.
You doing audiobooks at all?
No, I haven't. So
you'd have to download it, I guess.
I have the Libby app on my phone, and it's through the library, and you can renew your library card each year, and I haven't renewed it yet. And so I have not been doing any audiobooks because of that reason, because I just haven't gone to the library to renew my library card. But if I have like a quick moment, I'm interested to hear your perspective now that you've just booked the flight, Fran. Are you in the camp of recline your seat or don't recline your seat?
It's a long. The first one's going to be overnight. We booked a trip to Croatia for kind of like a belated honeymoon. So going out, it's a 13-hour flight with a 4-hour layover in Munich, and coming home, it's like a 10-hour nonstop. So I think, we're going on one day and arriving the next. I think you have to recline. But it's also an international flight, which I would imagine there's a little bit more space than a domestic flight.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I would guess so.
Well, you've been to like Italy.
I haven't had issues on planes over like abroad.
Yeah.
With leg room,
because you probably have a little bit more space. But
I was on a Spirit flight once where I was in like the last row and my knees were like around the seat in front of me.
Now
I couldn't move.
I will say this, probably I haven't flown a lot domestically recently, but probably like the last 4 or 5 flights I took were exit row, which those seats don't recline.
Yeah.
Or most of the time they don't recline, but you're given the luxury of the leg space. I can't remember the last time I didn't have a exit row.
Yeah, I try and shoot for those when I can, but now they always try and get you to pay extra. But yeah, I'm definitely team never recline.
Really,
and I don't like it when the people in front of me do it because honestly, if the
you're not reclining
in
that
front
much,
of me honestly can't recline because my knees tend to be in the back of the seat anyway. And that's not on purpose. That's just genetics that my legs are in that back of the seat.
No.
So it's a.
This will be the first time.
I appreciate when people don't recline in front of me.
This will be the first time me flying with Agatha, who is much smaller than me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have the luxury of encroaching on her unused
space.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I ask is because my wife and my son and I are taking a trip, and I'm like,
put him
it's
in the
already
middle.
nice when it's just my wife next to me because she's fairly petite, and so I can use up. I just put the armrest up. I'll use some of her seat too, and then and take over her legroom. And now I got a 38-inch tall kid in between us. I'm going to be living like a king.
You're going to have more room than you know what to do with.
I have a feeling that he's going to be a handful on the plane too. So,
how long of a flight is it?
It's only like 2 hours.
Oh, that's not
We're
too
just
bad.
Going to Florida.
That's less than when you drive up to the Adirondacks.
Yes.
If you think about it. So hopefully that keeps them.
I'm more worried, and this is another. I guess by the time people hear this, I've already flown and I've already dealt with this. But I'm worried about his ears popping. I remember that when I was a kid flying, and I was like, I didn't know what to do, and I only learned through diving. Like, if you just move your jaw a little bit or you swallow. That's why chewing gum works. But I'll or you when you're you blow, you hold your nose and blow. You can do that, and it'll kind of clear your ears a little bit. So I know it from scuba diving, and then I started doing it on planes. I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, and it works. Yeah. So I'll just I've gotten to this thing now where I just kind of move my jaw a little bit, and I can feel it, and it'll pop my ears.
Nice.
So I've been trying to teach that to him and say, hey, go like this. You'll pop your jaw and clear your ears, and then that's what I'm worried about. He's going to freak out that his ears hurt.
Now that I'm thinking about it, Tom, I don't know that I have flown for 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's been 10 years since I was on a flight.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. So it's been quite some time. I haven't had to fly anywhere for business. Yeah. It's been quite some time.
Yeah. What's been crazy, and I was thinking about this for my secret, but I'll do this now, is
you sure? I don't have a secret.
I have another secret I can tell.
All right.
I never used to flying was easy. I was never worried about it, but now that I have a family, I'm petrified of takeoffs and landings. I'm not petrified. I'm still okay. What brings me some calmness is saying, well, if something happens, at least we'll be over quick. Which is kind of
that's true.
A sick thing to say, but it's okay, yeah.
It's not like you're panicking in the air, thinking, oh my god, you have minutes before you die. You're just not going to know.
Yeah,
it's just going to happen.
But I don't know. I get nervous on takeoffs, and I brought that up to my wife. She's like, "How do you think I feel flying every time I've been on a plane?" And so I think that's a much more common thing than I used to feel.
And I think I've shared this with you. So my youngest son is currently going through flight school, and he's just about done. He's getting ready to take the test for a private pilot license. So it's his first step. And I was kind of shocked to find out that when you're going for your private pilot's license, you do solo airtime without an instructor. You need to do that. And so much cross-country time and all that. He's spending time up in the air by himself without a license, which scared the crap out of me because at some point you're taking off and landing without someone in the plane, and he's doing touchdowns too, touchdown, going right back up, and going to airports, without his instructor.
Yeah,
that scared me. It's probably. I'm sure it scared him, but it might have scared me more than it scared him.
You know what? When you're in control, that's what I've always found. When I'm in control, I'm a lot less scared. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I don't like roller coasters. That could have been my secret too.
Ooh.
Don't like roller coasters because I can't slow us down or speed us up at my control.
I understand that. Yeah. You know what? As a control freak, I completely understand that.
But that was not our take it or leave it. We have a take it or leave it here.
Actually, what made me think of this, I was at a conference recently and someone gave me a really awesome reusable straw that I love, and I have it with my hiking and camping stuff or whenever, we're out and about. And I was looking at it and I was like, this is pretty awesome that I don't have to use a straw, but do I even need a straw? It's great that you're not taking disposable straws, but do you have to have other than a milkshake?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I was going to say, are reusable straws, how many because this one's made out of metal and it has a cleaning brush and a case, and granted, you're only buying it once.
Yeah.
But now I'm cleaning it. I'm using water. Are straws that necessary?
I almost never used straws up until I got one of these metal cups.
Yeah.
And then it was you kind of had to use the straw because it had the lid on it. And like if I'm transporting around, you need the lid on it to keep from splashing all over, and you need the straw. So then I started drinking out of straws, and we had metal ones or plastic ones, and then but then I got this Hydro Flask, and I don't use a straw with this. And
my Yeti, I don't use
when I
a
drink
straw.
out of if I like have a cup at home, I don't drink out of a straw.
No.
I guess it's like if you get fast food, but I'll usually not get the straw, except they just sneak the straw in the bag now sometimes. But I tell them, you can keep the straw, and then I would pour it in my reusable cup.
Which is a fantastic way to
drink it. So I still
it.
have the lid and the paper. I don't know how you get around getting that in a drive-thru.
Some of the cups are a little flimsy.
Yeah.
When I go to get coffee sometimes, I take my Yeti in and say, like, I know how many ounces it is. I'm like, I'll just fill this.
Yep.
So I'm not even using one of their cups.
Yeah.
Although some people are a little perplexed when I do that. And I'm sure it's a little easier in Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks because they sell them.
They know their thing.
Yeah, but and Wawa, it's a lot of times it's
self-serve,
one price, it's self-serve, one price, so it doesn't matter. But like regardless, I try to take my own thing in there. But like, if you got a soda from say McDonald's, they're filling it to the top. Like you try to squeeze that without a lid on it, and you're spilling it.
Yep.
But I think the idea of putting it in your Hydro Flask is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, it's so straws in general I'm out on, but I think it's appropriate to use a reusable straw. There's people who are like very pro straw.
Yeah.
I never got that. But that's, again, like, I just didn't get it. It's not like they were doing anything wrong. But there's some people who, like, only drink out of straws. Could you imagine?
Oh, no. And you know what? And this reusable straw is like, it's like a transformer.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable. Like, it comes out, it folds up like a wand. Like, it's
no
amazing.
way.
Yeah. It's got like a plastic membrane in the middle. It's metal.
Okay.
And it's 4 pieces. And you just stretch it out. It gives you a brush that's in the case that you can clean it out. It's pretty awesome.
This is another little aside, but what is, like, I think about it with camping, and then I always look at the people longingly, the people who are doing, like, the really backwoods stuff where they're going out in, like, the wilderness and camping, and they're bringing everything on their back and, like, the freeze-dried meals. I'm like, I'd like to do that someday, but there's one thing that holds me back, other than my physical fitness, that holds me back from doing that. And I love ice to drink way too much. And I'm like, I don't know if I could take a week without ice in my drink. What is like one creature comfort that you have that you like that would prevent you from doing something like that? Like, what do you need to have that's
a good question.
Like, this is, I guess, to put it this way, I would much rather go. I would need ice in my drink for a week. Like, I couldn't do that for a week. Much more so than I couldn't go without toilet paper for a week. I could figure that out. Yeah. That wouldn't bother me. But the ice in my drink, I would be I would get back and I would be like, I just want like ice again.
Now listen, I think the first thing that came to mind for me is, and I mentioned this to you before, like I got a fitness watch, and the one thing I realize is like one thing I do better than anything else is sleep. Yeah. Like I sleep like a all-star. I can't sleep if I'm sweaty.
Yeah.
Like if it's too hot, like if it's I can sleep in the cold, I can add layers, I can do that. But if it's like summer, like, and that's when you want ice, you know, but if it were summer, like if it's hot enough where it's sweating, if I don't have a portable fan, I can't do it. I can't. I'll never sleep.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else. Like, I just can't. Like, I'd have to have a fan. Like, I'd have to have some sort of fan.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good one, too. Because it's like, oh, yeah, what do you do if
cold, just keep I'll go to sleep with all my clothes on. I'll put tomorrow's clothes on, too.
Like, I wouldn't even mind wearing dirty clothes. Like, I kind of...
That doesn't faze me at all.
That's kind of
fun. That doesn't faze me at all.
But it's like, it's
I can go without shaving. I can do all that. Like, I can do without a lot of amenities. But if it's not cool enough at night, I'll never sleep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would love to hear what other people's things are, like that they can't do without. And then it's just like, I'm like, what would like my great grandparents say if they heard me complaining about
too hot?
I need some ice.
Well, I was wondering what made me think with the straw is what kind of like this straw was so extravagant.
Yeah.
That what kind of footprint is that
Oh, yeah,
creating
yeah.
compared to the other straws?
Well, yeah, I know that was one of the things with the plastic bags is when you really boiled down the resources that went into a single-use plastic bag versus the far end was an organic cotton reusable bag. It was like, oh, you're going to have to use that cotton bag like 2,500 times or something. It was some crazy number. It was basically you're using it every day for a decade before you had reached the lifespan or the footprint just of that one cotton bag versus one reusable
and
bag.
we've talked about this. And what I've learned is I can go without a bag.
Yeah.
I don't need a bag. Like I'll take the cart to my car, throw it in the back, and then I'll walk up. There's some great ring footage of me holding 3 half-gallons of ice cream like between my chin and my hand while trying to unlock the door. Because I'm like, I'm not using a bag for this, whether it's plastic or reusable.
Yeah.
I have learned that unless it's a big shopping, and then I'll recycle the cardboard that they have sometimes just to take out. Like I don't need that, but I just can't sleep in that. If I'm sweating, there's no sleep being had at all. Yep. So
there you go. You have a 2-for-1. Take it or leave it. I don't even know how to describe. I guess the second part wasn't a take it or leave it. It was. I guess it kind of was.
It was like, informational.
What's the one thing that you could do without or can't do without?
All right, we'll have to. All right, Alyssa Lewis, we're our unofficial scribe or official scribe. We're going to task you with putting up the post in Native Plants Healthy Planet to see what other people can't live without.
And now I remembered what I actually, if for full disclosure, in the very beginning, after the 3-year anniversary thing, I had something I was gonna say that wasn't in our notes, which I forgot.
Okay,
I remembered in that last segment.
Oh, all right, what is it?
I forgot again, and I just remembered now, and that was that. That we had our write-up in the Blazing Star.
Oh, it did
That's
come
what
out.
I was going to talk about. And
yes.
I love the description, the edgier and fast-paced podcast, which is, I think, exactly what we were going for.
It was exactly what we were going for.
We wanted to be the Skip and Stephen A. of native plants.
We don't really argue that much, though.
Preposterous.
Yes. But
the
article, so the Blazing Star is the monthly publication from the North American Native Plant Society, and it's one of the first articles in the publication, and it was highlighted 3 native plant podcasts that they love to listen to, and we were one of the 3. And there is a difference between all 3, and I think there's a space for all 3 in a little bit different niche. One is a little more detailed. In a good way. Like if you really want to dive in, it's going to be a little bit more detailed. The other one is very almost nurturing. Not saying that we're not nurturing, but it's almost like a very holistic approach to ecology. And then us, which is, a little bit of humor, a little bit of fact, a little bit of
speculation,
ignorance. But you're more than guaranteed to at least take away one good thing from each episode.
So that's going to wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Thank you, RJ Comer, for our Buzz theme music. It wouldn't be the same without you. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume your music, or make sure you check out his Americana playlist on Pandora. You'll be happy that you did. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, or Native Plants _Healthy Planet. Big shout out to the reels that Tom's been producing. You've been doing some great, it's nice to see how well they're being received and shared, and they're very informational. And Tom's doing a wonderful job.
I have to go record a bunch more because it's this was a byproduct of hanging out with it was Kyle Lieberger and Jake and I were going to have some lunch. When I met up with them, they're like, hey, you mind if we invite these other guys? And it was this guy, Catman Outdoors, who's a YouTube hunter who I'm like, oh, I watch all your stuff. So, definitely come along. And then the guy, Alan Summerford, and then another guy, Jacob, who was a co-host of the Southern Outdoorsman podcast. So now I'm dealing with people who have hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers or hundreds of thousands of listeners a month to their podcasts or TikToks and all. And they were just kind of all sharing ideas. And I was just like making mental notes. Okay, do this, do this, do this, do this. So that was some of the things that Kyle was saying, was like posting YouTube shorts and all this different stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to try some of this. And it was just cool. Like you do it, and like just taking those little tidbits of information. It's like, oh man, that got 7,000 views. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's, my wife always puts me in perspective too, because then it's like, well, but Kyle's getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Then she's
but
like,
even Kyle started somewhere.
She's like, if you were to have 7,000, if you ever give a talk, and like a 10-minute talk, and you had 7,000 people there, don't you think you'd be really happy about that?
Think about that. That would
you're right.
Locally, you're selling out. You're selling out the Met.
Yeah.
Like think about that. Imagine if we did talk and we had that many people. Yeah. But you're giving it to them in short, digestible, consumable tidbits that they can share and enjoy and watch a few times and get something out of it each time that maybe they missed the first time. So.
And I think that's an important takeaway for everybody is Fran, how did we get on this, by the way? Where in the credits were we?
I was shouting out our social media and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. But no, it's I just want to commend, if you haven't seen them, check out, they've been posted on all of our social media.
It's a credit to everyone, really. Just if you do a little bit and you get 10 people, if you had 10 people listening to your spiel on native plants, I think a lot of people, I would be happy. People were talking to me, talk about my yard like 10 people were saying, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. That would be awesome.
And you know what? I have to say, as a side note, I know I'm getting off topic now, but I was part of a conversation about deer in our local township Town Talk post, and I have gotten spoiled by being part of a very nurturing and knowledgeable community. And I realized how uninformed so many people in this talk were, or how their information they thought was fact, which was nothing more than myth and opinion. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, I don't even know how to have this conversation because it's not going to be received well at all, about deer and habitat and defragmentation. It was just, most people didn't know and didn't care. Mm-hmm. They really didn't. Yep. And it was, I feel very fortunate to be in this very nurturing, artistic environment with our listeners. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you stroll outside of that, it's not as well received. But if we can keep converting one from that group to this group every now and then, it would go a long way. Oh yeah. So if you could do something like that and get a couple people to watch and maybe think, it's a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. Don't forget about the question and comment line. You can call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. We'll try to the best of our ability, play it on a future episode of The Buzz. And as we were just talking about our wonderful Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group and how wonderful of a community that is, make sure you join it if you're not already a member.
Yeah, so you can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a link right at the top, takes you to our Teespring store, and we have a whole bunch of different designs, and it's not just shirts, it's all kinds of stuff, phone cases, aprons, baby onesies. You can get whatever you want. That's a great gift, by the way. Give a baby onesie.
Oh, that's a wonderful gift.
It's your sister-in-law, just had a baby, Native Plants Healthy Planet, baby onesie, plant native plants. They're going to be doing that for life.
Your parents are the originator of the do you remember, like, one of our customers had twins and your parents had custom onesies made and it had like wetlands with an arrow down?
Oh no, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. I can't remember what the other one said. One said wetlands with an arrow down. I can't remember. I'll have to look up what the other one was.
Maybe I should make those.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe it's like a whole for ecologists baby onesies.
I like it. It's a whole line.
But so you can listen to Native Plants. Oh yeah, with our merch sales, we don't keep anything. We take it and we give it to organizations that really deserve it. It's all our judgment, so it's basically someone will really impress us with what they're doing and say, hey, we want to put that money towards them. So it's not only are you making a fashion statement and just an ecology statement, you're also in a roundabout way giving back to some of these organizations. So you can listen to our podcast, Native Plants Healthy Planet, at really on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you consume your podcasts. You can even ask Alexa to play Native Plants Healthy Planet, and she will do your wish and command.
Yes.
And if you do us a big favor, if it's at all possible, leave a 5-star review, hit subscribe. That goes a long way. And if you do a little write-up, I'll give you a listener shout-out. So awesome.
All right, what do you got for a secret?
Yeah, so we were just we had our little off-script discussion about reclining on planes, and where I said I am in the team never recline. I hate when people recline in front of me. I understand the seat is designed to do that.
Yes. It's their right to do it.
It's their right to do it, but I think it's awfully inconsiderate to tall people like me, and I do want to admit that I have reclined on a plane once, and it was actually completely by accident. And I did not even know I reclined until the stewardess came up and said, "Hey, can you put your seat back up? We're getting ready to land." And I was like, "My seat's reclined?" I had no idea. I hit the button in my sleep, I guess, and I went back, and I don't know. But and I was so embarrassed. I was like, "I'm a liar. I'm a hypocrite.
Wow.
Everything I've stand for is gone.
It's a sham."
But yeah, I know that whole debate can get people going. So
yeah,
I would love to see what our listener makeup is, if they're recliners or not recliners.
All right, let's say if you've never seen it, Ellen DeGeneres has a fantastic skit about reclining on an airplane that I think you would appreciate, where it's like uncomfortable, comfortable, like uncomfortable, comfortable. She goes, it's a 2-inch difference on an airplane, which is very true.
So. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Coming up next week, we have a fabulous guest. We've actually recorded Dr. Michael Curran from Abnova. And I think you'll see how very similar what he's doing out in the Midwest and what Dr. Shevitz is doing here in other parts of the world are very similar, but coming from a different ways. And they both have very unique journeys of how they got to where they go. So I think that these two will tie together very well. It just we didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened. So I think it's going to be another fantastic episode, and we're looking forward to putting it out in the world for you to hear. So make sure you tune in again next time. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.